Good morning. It is March 15th, 2024. This is episode 107 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast, a podcast by a dreamer for dreamers, stand-up comedian, actor, and improviser. Paul Green here as I document my journey pursuing my dreams as a performer, as an entertainer, and just bring you the day-by-day what I'm experiencing, what I'm learning along the way. So I have officially traveled back to Phoenix, Arizona after about a week being away. Actually, I think almost exactly a week being away. I had my gig in San Diego last Saturday, and then I ended up booking that film shoot in Los Angeles. I say film shoot, it was actually a TV show for Wednesday and Thursday. So I just stayed through the week, stayed with my good friend Bill Cott, who I interviewed on my podcast yesterday, if you had a chance to check that out. If not, I would. He has had an incredible career in film and television. It's been in a couple major movies and major TV shows, and he and I have been friends for, since I first moved out to LA, so good 9-10 years, and have done a handful of performances together. He's a magician, actually, and I play piano for his magic duo at the Magic Castle, and actually I will be doing that with him next month, so that should be fun. And yesterday morning, I had a chance to have lunch with a good comedian friend of mine, Drew Lynch. If you don't know Drew Lynch, do yourself a favor and just Google Drew Lynch and watch anything he's ever done. He is one of the funniest comics that I know. He got on America's Got Talent a handful of years ago. I don't remember how long it's been now. And got the Golden Buzzer from Howie Mandel and really launched his comedy career. And just really funny, and just such a, he has an incredible energy, and it's kind of weird that we became friends, because it was almost like I had only met him once before in LA, like 3 years ago, maybe even longer than that. It might have even been 4 or 5 years ago, at this comedy show where I had won a comedy contest, and part of winning was I got to do a show, and Drew Lynch opened the show, and so I got to meet him before the show, and we just talked a little bit, but that was really the extent of it. And from there, I don't even remember if I had ran into him. I may have ran into him a couple times, but I'd never really talked to him. And then last year in October, I did a comedy festival up in Las Vegas, and he just happened to be in town. He wasn't even in the festival. He was just kind of hanging around to be supportive. And I saw him outside of this comedy club. And so I went up and shook his hand. And the way that he was talking to me was like we were like longtime friends. And he just kind of gave me that energy, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But to me, he's a celebrity. So I was talking to him, kind of like, oh, I know who you are because I've been following your career, and we did do a show together, but we had never really, it's not like we had ever hung out, or even at this show we hung out a little bit before the show in the green room, but after the show, it's not like we went out or anything. And plus, that was years ago. And so, anyway, so we're in Vegas. So I just see him outside of this comedy club, and we just chat for a few minutes, and then that was it. Well, later that night, I am in my hotel. I think I was staying at the Strat that night. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go walk around the Strat and see what's going on. So I just go downstairs and I just start walking around the floor of the Strat. And then I see him with another comic who oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I can't remember the other comic's name. And so I just kind of ended up talking to these two comics, and they were just kind of hanging out and finding things to do in Vegas. And so I just sort of combined with these two, and then that was the first time I'd ever really hung out with him. And he had like a buddy who had some stuff going on. We were going to go dancing and do all this stuff. So anyway, he and I ended up with this other comic hanging out until like 1 or 2 in the morning. And, you know, we went dancing and went and got ice cream, and we played like Connect Four. The other comedian we were with is like a Connect Four savant, and I thought he was kind of joking, but like he absolutely is, and actually just totally annihilated me and Drew. We couldn't even come close to beating this guy. He's just, that's like his thing, is beating people in Connect Four. So anyway, so I got Drew's number, and then, you know, over the last 5 or 6 months, you know, we've texted a couple times, just kind of like checking in and doing jokes and stuff. But anyway, now that I was in LA, I wanted to see if he was free to hang out. So anyway, we ended up going to breakfast, and I just had so much fun. He has just some of the best, like, it's going to sound kind of pretentious, but like he has like a pure energy about him. And he's objectively funny. And so like just hanging out with him is just like, for me, it's just like pure bliss. Like I'm having so much fun. We'll go into these like prolonged bits, you know, which again is kind of like that's like an improviser thing maybe, or whatever, you know, to where, you know, we're just, anyway, I think you know what I'm describing. And so I had so much fun going to breakfast with him, and I actually saw that he was going to be at the Comedy Store last night, Thursday night, along with another friend of mine, Jia Summers, who just started doing comedy about 4 years ago, and she and I had met at a comedy show and then became friends. And then Jia Ying actually started a little comedy club herself in Hollywood that I would do open mics at, and I did a couple performances at. But now Jia Ying is huge. She is touring like crazy right now. She's blowing up. She's been very successful on social media and very successful touring now, and is you know, getting a lot of notoriety. And so I was really excited to see her. So her and Drew were both going to be on the same show. So I was like, oh, I got to go to the Comedy Store. So I went to the Comedy Store, checked out the show, had a really, really great time. The show was really fun. And when I went downstairs, it was up in the belly room. Those of you know the Comedy Store, the belly room is kind of like up in this attic of the Comedy Store. When I went downstairs, I saw Mark Maron hanging out by the back door, which, you know, it's just always kind of cool to see these sort of just complete like iconic comedians, and they're just hanging out at the Comedy Store. And so I'm actually friends with one of the bouncers at the Comedy Store, and so he snuck me into the other room where Mark Maron was going to be performing. So I hung out and watched Mark Maron, and then hopped in the car, and I am right now I'm recording this in Blythe, Arizona. By the time you're hearing this, I will have been. Actually, I still might be in Blythe by the time you hear this, but I will most likely be driving back to Phoenix today. I'm trying to remember in the podcast if I said I'm already back in Phoenix. It's kind of funny because I usually record these the night before, and I always set them to post in the morning. So I always try to talk as though it's the next morning, since that's when you're hearing it. You know, I try to bend my concept of time so that I'm talking to you in real time when this airs, which is probably way too much overthinking. But, you know, that's kind of something I'm learning about myself, is I'm a bit of a people pleaser and a bit of an overthinker. And I am working on that. I've actually, I don't know why I'm going down this rabbit hole, but this is where my mind is going. Before I went to the Comedy Store, I went and had dinner with another comedian friend of mine, Josh Nassar, who I've talked a lot about. He's been very successful on social media, and he's really funny, and he and I have developed a pretty strong friendship. I talked a lot about my origin story with Josh, actually, a few days ago. But so he and I went to dinner again and had a great conversation, but he mentioned, he kind of called me out that I was talking loud. And I've actually had a couple of people say that to me recently. I was actually hanging out with a lady friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and she was sort of like kind of cringing backwards a little bit, like that kind of that look, when like a loud siren or like, a police siren or an alarm goes off and it's really close and you kind of wince a little bit. And she's like wincing, and I'm like, what it is? And she's like, do you know that you're like yelling? And the truth of the matter is I was totally unaware. And so I'm hanging out with Josh, and he said something similar. He's like, you're talking really loud. And it's something now that I'm starting to become like self-conscious about, like self-conscious in the good way of like, yeah, my default, like in public setting voice is just very loud. And then, I have to like, well, why is that? I'm sure it's something from my childhood. So then, I Googled what happens in your childhood that makes you talk loud as an adult or whatever it was. And a lot of it applied. It was like, well, if you lived in a big family and it was hard to get a word in edgewise, then you would, you sort of taught yourself to speak really loud, because you have to speak loud enough to stop all of the other conversations and pull the focus onto you. And, I was raised in a family with 6 kids and 2 parents, and even my extended family were all very, they all have big personalities. All my aunts and uncles, big personalities. Everybody's funny. Humor is a big deal. So for me to even like ever get a word in edgewise in my family, man, you got to attract a lot of attention really fast, and you better be sharp, witty, quick, and funny, or you will get buried. So that's one thing. And then another thing that said it could be a sign of insecurity. And so your insecurity and anxiousness and anxiety. So you're sort of overcompensating for this insecurity and anxiety. And I'm going like, oh yeah, that's definitely the case. Like I always have social anxiety just being out in public, even if it's one-on-one with a friend. Well, obviously, because it's like I'm literally am one-on-one with a friend, and here I am, blowing their eardrums out, even though they're like right across the table from me. Another one of them has said like it could be that you're hearing impaired, which I don't think that's the case. I mean, at least I've never like failed a hearing test or anything like that. I did play on the drum line all through high school, which can really mess up your hearing if you don't wear earplugs, which I didn't. So, maybe that, but it's not like I was in a heavy metal band, all through my 20s. But anyway, I've never been diagnosed with any sort of hearing loss, and it doesn't feel that way to me. It's like when I was hanging out with that lady friend a couple weeks ago, she was just like right there. I wasn't like, it's not like I couldn't hear myself, or it's not like I couldn't hear her, or even at dinner, at dinner, maybe I'm a little more inclined to raise my voice because, there's background music, and the restaurant we were at is like right on Sunset Boulevard, and, the traffic is going. And so I think there, maybe it, there's just a lot more sort of ambient noise that might, but it wasn't like I was hard of hearing, but, it's, there's more to focus on. There's more noise that you have to sort of cut through to focus on what my buddy was saying. But it's not like I couldn't hear him. And yet I was still talking really loud. And when I was thinking about it, I'm going like, I do feel a little anxious. And then I thought about when I was at breakfast with my buddy Drew. I'm like, I feel a little, like, I just always feel a little anxious anytime I'm in a public setting, having a conversation with somebody, even if they're good friends of mine, even if I know them. I do have this default social anxiety just to be in any sort of conversation. It's not 100% of the time, but it's fairly often. So it would seem that that is also something that, because my anxiety is high, that I have a tendency to overcompensate for that with just talking really loud, just having a lot of volume, having a lot of energy in my voice, even when it's not necessary. So like even right now, when I'm recording this podcast, I'm actually very conscious of just like, I'm just going to talk normal, whatever that feels like to me. And, not put a lot of extra energy into my voice. And I feel like even recording this podcast, I probably do speak louder, even though it's just usually me alone in a room talking into a microphone. So anyway, that was a very interesting revelation that, I mean, I always knew I had a loud voice. I always knew I could project, but I don't think I was as self-aware to know that, oh, I just talk at a high volume all the time. Just my sort of default private voice. So, another personal growth moment. Yay, more personal growth. So that was interesting. So I had that great day yesterday. I had breakfast with Drew in the morning. I actually went straight to my TV shoot. They had me in a couple more scenes today than they did the first day. The first day they filmed me for 5 minutes total, and then released me right away. So I was supposed to do a full, or maybe a full half day. I think I was supposed to do a half day, which I think is 5 hours. And I was really only there about an hour and a half, and I was really only actually on set for maybe 10 minutes. And most of that 10 minutes was, the cast, or not the cast, the crew setting things up for the shot. So it wasn't like it was 10 minutes of constant filming. Yesterday, it was at a different location, and I did 1, 2, 3 different locations, which again was very, very fun. And actually, it was very nostalgic. So we did the filming at this film studio in Burbank. And when I went to the film studio, it was one of those things where I walked right in and I'm going, I've seen this before. Where have I seen this? And it occurred to me that when I'd first moved to LA, maybe 2016 or 2017, I had auditioned for this student film and I got booked for the role. And we filmed the whole series in that same studio. It's just this pre-built production studio that has all of these different sets. So when you walk around the building, there's like a hospital room, and then next to that is like a jail cell, and then next to that is a hotel room, and then there's a bedroom, and then there's this whole sort of office style bullpen, so you could do any sort of office type thing, right? And obviously it's just built for the intent that any film production that just needs a specific type of room to film something, they can just rent out the studio and bring in their film equipment. All of the stuff is already there. All of the props, and there's a hospital room there, right? And has the bed and the defibrillator and, the crash cart and all of that stuff. The EKG machine and And then again, you go to the jail cell, and, there's the bars and the security thing. And then there's an interrogation room right next to the jail cell, and it has the security cameras and that the two-way glass. And, but yeah, so again, back, I think it was 2017, I filmed the whole thing, a bunch of scenes in that very location. And I actually used one of the scenes that we filmed in that location on my reel because it turned out really good. So that was cool. It was sort of nostalgic to be back in that studio from when I was there. Gosh, I think it was 7 years ago. I remember I wanted to actually see if I could find the initial footage. And so I was doing a bunch of Googling, and I think it was actually 2017 that I did that. Gosh, can you believe it was 7 years ago? Time flies, my friends. We're all going to be dead soon. Sorry, that got real dark. So had a chance to film that TV show. Man, it was just such a fun trip to be back in LA, to get a chance to walk down memory lane, connect with some good friends. My buddy Bill Cott, who again was gracious enough to let me stay with him and be in my podcast. Yeah, Drew Lynch, just had such a fun time going to breakfast with him, hanging out with my buddy Josh Nassar, helping him with his website and his social media. And he's starting to help me with my social media to give me some ideas on how to be more effective, and going to the Comedy Store, seeing my friend Zhao Ying Summers, seeing Mark Maron, celebrity, and oh man, was he just so funny. He's so smart. So just a good trip overall, just a really good trip. I was so glad I went. And I forgot, Tuesday night I went to go see my old acting teacher, Constance Sterling, who is just an incredible human being, and got to go sit in on her class and surprise her. So many fun things going on in LA. And I'll tell you, I have been feeling a certain inclination that I might want to think about moving back, at least on some sort of temporary basis. I am having a real hard time wrapping my head around that, because I can attest it is a lot of freaking work to live in that. Just to live in Los Angeles is just so hard. It is just not an easy city to live in, and I did all that. I went out there for 7 years, fought the traffic, fought the bureaucracy, fought the traffic tickets and the no parking anywhere, and the exorbitantly high rent for just crappy real estate. And, and I was happy as could be, and I was not ready to leave. And then, life happened the way that it happened. And now I just have been feeling a certain inclination. It's weird because it keeps popping into my mind, yet there's no emotion behind it, because I think I don't want to feel emotion, because it's almost like I don't want to be inspired or feel that sort of inspiration to move back, because there's a part of me that just doesn't want to do it. And the reality is the only reason I don't want to do it is just pure laziness and comfort, because I'm just so comfortable in Phoenix. I'm in such a great position, and it's so easy. And the thought of packing up and moving back into that environment in LA, which on the one hand I loved because of everything that's going on there, but on the other hand, it's just a pain in the ass to live there. And Phoenix is just so easy. Oh, Phoenix, you spoil me. So yeah, I'm really going to need some very serious, prodding for me to head back to good old Arizona. But head back to Los Angeles. So I'll have to see what the universe is up to, and that's part of dreaming, is you got to just be open to those messages and be open to making changes, open to being uncomfortable if that's what is being called for. So I'm really going to have to get connected and present and prayerful and all of that meditative fun stuff, just to see what that's all about, because I cannot picture myself actually moving back to California like permanently, going back to the DMV and getting California license plates. It's like, no thanks. But I have been looking at places that are just looking for a roommate, to take a room in their place. Because, that's what I did when I first moved out there, and I just got a steal of a deal. And so anyway, I've just been looking for like a room in a place that might give me a month, or, knowing that I'm only going to be there for a couple months. So we'll see, everybody. But that is the update from the Paul Green Comedy Podcast, a podcast by a dreamer for dreamers. I am so tired because I have just been driving a ton and, just in full travel mode. So definitely am going to get some sleep. Although, again, when you're listening to this, it's probably already in the next morning. So I hope all of you are doing well. You are out there pursuing your dreams. You're having great experiences. And I love you all so much. And I will check in with you tomorrow on the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast.